My guest today is Adena Ishii. Adena is the mayor of Berkeley, California. She is the youngest mayor of a city of over 100,000 people. And the city that she runs, Berkeley, is consistently ranked the most livable city in America. I wanted to have Mayor Ishii on, not just because she's my mayor, but because I've been obsessed recently with this idea of public service. See, public service, or being a public servant, was a virtue that we used to aspire to as young people. It was something we encouraged as a society. But in recent decades, that sort of started to die out. It got replaced with this much more cynical form of political opportunism. People were much more interested in being political influencers in the Senate or in Congress than being actual political public servants. And I started to lose hope for the idea of public service. But in recent months, I found a bit of a return to that old idea of public service. And I find that return is being led by America's mayors. And Mayor Ishii is an excellent example of this. Mayor Ishii hates being described as a politician because that's not how she sees herself. When you hear her talk, in a second, you'll notice she doesn't sound like any elected official you've ever heard because she doesn't see herself primarily as a politician. She sees herself as a public servant. She is obsessed with the day-to-day lives of the people that live in her city. She's obsessed with how it feels to be in her city, how it feels to interact with her government. I found the conversation really refreshing and very encouraging. I think you will too. With that, I bring you Mayor Adena Ishii. Mayor Ishii, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I cannot imagine how busy you are, so I appreciate you coming out for this. I want to start at a very sort of high level. And I want to start with where you grew up and how your family ended up there. So, Agora Hills, how did you come to be there? How did your family come to be there?
Yeah, so my parents were actually raised both in New York, and they moved out to California to be in the film industry. So my mom was an assistant film editor. My dad was a camera assistant. And actually, even before that, he was a sound editor. And so the story goes that he walked into her cutting room and started taking her film. And she's like, "Excuse me, why are you taking my film? Who are you?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm the sound editor." And that's how they met. And as two Asian people in the film industry back then, it was incredibly rare. So of course, everyone was like, you're Asian, you should date. And so, my parents were like, okay, we have to stay in Southern California. It's near the industry. But my mom had actually always wanted to move back to the Bay Area. Her mom had actually grown up in the Bay Area in East Bay. And so, I don't know, it feels special for me to be in Berkeley.
Well, on that point, just taking a step back, tell me a little bit about sort of your family's history in America, because I think it's very interesting, and I wish it were more unique, right? Because it's a story that so many people have. But tell me a little bit about.
Yeah, I mean, it's unique actually in that I'm Japanese, Chinese, and Indian, and if you know anything about Asian history, you know that those cultures don't always get along. And so I think that in itself actually is interesting.
Totally.
On my mother's side, she's full Japanese, so Japanese American. I'm fourth generation Japanese American. And on my father's side, his father was Japanese American and was a soldier in the MIS, Military Intelligence Service, during World War II. He was stationed in China. And my grandmother, my father's mother, was actually born and raised in Hong Kong, and Chinese and Indian. And they were actually escaping. She and her sisters had dressed as boys to escape Hong Kong, running from Japanese soldiers. And so there she was in China, met this Japanese American man and, fell in love, and they got married. And you can imagine her parents being so upset about, the idea that she had married this Japanese American man when Hong Kong had just experienced really horrible things by Japanese soldiers. Mm-hmm. And it was really very brave, actually, of her to marry this person, to travel to another country. They had to travel by steamer ship, back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't know the mechanics of ships, so I can't tell you, but they were on some kind of boat and they traveled to the United States, and he brought her back to live in the country. And I really love that, my family is mixed from so far back, because I think it really has taught me a lot about the importance of understanding different cultures and acceptance, how it's so important that we are celebrating different cultures, because I've experienced so much racism just as a mixed Asian person, where growing up there were people like, oh, why aren't you pure this? Or how could you be three things? People used to have you.
Pure, kind of like a gnarly, weird word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and nowadays there are so many young people who are mixed that it's so not a thing even to say like, oh, I'm these 3 things, 5 things, 10 things, So I really love that, especially about the Bay Area too.
Yeah, I should clarify also. When I said I wish it was more unique, I specifically am talking about the experience of discrimination and having to give up so much to become American, feeling so much pride in it, but also feeling at the same time not included in America, right? That I wish I think everybody has their own sort of deeply specific and beautiful story of getting here. But that experience I find is such a through line through all the immigrant experiences, right? Of you do everything to become American, and America doesn't always seem to see you as that, right?
Yeah, or more explicitly reject you, right? The Exclusion Act, the incarceration of Japanese Americans, even what's happening today, attacking immigrant population. Yeah, absolutely. I think that is really heartbreaking.
Yeah. I guess I was going to ask this later, but I'm curious about growing up, given this family history, right? And I have in my notes that both sides, grandparents fought in World War II, right? Mm-hmm. And at the same time, your family faced incarceration by the same country. Sorry, not incarceration.
Yeah.
But I guess, incarceration. By the same country that your family was fighting, right? So how did that sort of hint your feeling of being Californian, being American? How did you feel? Was that part of your identity at all growing up?
Oh, yeah. I feel so, I really grew up, felt so conflicted about it. Always so proud to be American in that we have so many rights and privileges here that I am really proud of that they don't have in other countries. And I really don't take that for granted. And of course, being really disgusted and continuously disappointed by our government that continues to be racist and discriminatory against people of color. And, just the history of the founding of our country is so problematic. I mean, every 4th of July, I kind of vacillate. Honestly, I have this experience of so proud of what our country can stand for and what we can do and the work that we're trying to do right now in saving our democracy, and also just so frustrated and upset. And I think many people kind of experience this. I think being Japanese American in particular, have tried to spend more time learning about what my grandfathers were kind of thinking back then when they decided to serve their country, because they never talked about it when they were alive. Both of my grandparents, actually all of my grandparents, are deceased. And, my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a medic in the 442nd, which is, I think it's the most highly decorated battalion for its size. There are so many amazing stories about the 442nd. And I know that my grandfather really wanted to prove he was an American. And similarly for the other grandfather, I was able to actually find letters that he had written, questioning why he was rejected from the army in the first place, questioning this phrase that they were using, that he was an enemy alien. And just how heartbreaking that is to read these kind of letters of him trying so hard to serve his country, when I never really saw, my father's father as a patriot necessarily. But reading these letters and looking through, just what he did during those times, it was really kind of surprising to me.
Yeah. That's very powerful. My own little window into it is, I immigrated myself. My parents still live in India. And I am truly, having spoken to a lot of people about this, I'm as patriotic towards America as honestly anyone I've ever met. But there is this tension that sort of always, and I'm sorry, but not only am I patriotic, I feel a deep sense of service towards America. But a genuine conflict that lives within me is, how much does your membership in a group depend on the other members of the group seeing you as part of it, right? And I think that the thing that I have kind of like come to, and I don't know if this is as cope as the young ones call it now, but it feels like America is both things, right? Mm-hmm. America is both the thing being criticized and the one criticizing it, right? And the rights of the person, the getting to criticize it. And I think like in that tension, I find my own sort of American identity is that like, yes, it does have a Bellingham riots for Indian people we've never talked about, but this is, and you can just kind of go on and on like Bhagat Singh Tindley. There's like a long history. It's a difficult history for Indians, just like every other group in America. And that is true and cannot be glossed over, no matter how hard we try. But at the same time, it is also the people that struggled against that, right? It is, and somewhere in the middle is what America is. Like it is both the thing being criticized and the person that gets to criticize it, right?
I think it's always so important that we acknowledge the history of the past and we talk about how we want to change things and do things differently in the future.
Yeah.
We need to be able to hold both of those things together. I think to me, that is what America is, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, it's all the things, we need to be able to hold all of it. And something you said that stuck with me is like, how we're accepted by the other people. And I think that a lot of times people think of the others, they're always thinking of white people.
Yeah.
And so what's important to remember also is we are the other people too, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the more that we have this sense of identity of being a multi-racial, multi-ethnic society, country, the more we can feel ownership over, we get to decide who belongs.
Yeah.
And we get to decide that message of like, we are Americans, we are all Americans. And it's just about like who controls this narrative of like what America is too.
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful about that because I think a lot of people, for instance, have seen patriotism, they connect it with Trumpism. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's right. We need to sort of reclaim patriotism, what we think patriotism should look like.
My favorite article of clothing in my wardrobe is a sweater with the American flag on it, which it's not the Ralph Lauren one. In case I was like, it's the $20 Gap one.
There's not a teddy bear on it?
No, there's no teddy bear on it. I bought it at the Gap outlet in Livermore. But I love wearing it, and it was an odd thing to wear in like right after the election because in San Francisco, because a lot of people will assume your politics based off of it. But I feel like, no, you need to wear it, especially if you don't agree with what's going on. We can't surrender the idea of America to the people we disagree with. But I want to actually pull this way, 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 way back. We got, I want to bring this back to your specific household.
Sure.
You're growing up in Agora Hills. Tell me about your dad, and tell me especially sort of the story of your early childhood, how he gets diagnosed with early onset dementia, and like how did that, I guess this had like a very tactical level, like how did that sort of affect the logistics and sort of the mood of your household?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I smiled immediately when you asked me to talk about him because I'm incredibly proud of my parents, my family, and just everything that they've been through. And my dad was really brilliant. He actually got recruited out of high school to go to MIT during the space race.
Wow.
He was an amazing musician. He could play harmonica and guitar and piano, accordion, ukulele. He could play like whatever you wanted. And he would always carry his harmonica on his belt and he would just like pull it out and like do a little tune. happy birthday or whatever was going on. And I loved that about him. And, as you mentioned, from the time I was quite young, he started to get impacted. We started to see the signs that there was something kind of not right. He ended up later being diagnosed with early onset dementia, frontal temporal dementia. So it impacted his behavior. He would do kind of socially unacceptable, odd things. Like he would walk into somebody's house and just like play their piano. And, although some people might appreciate live music, of course, they're not going to appreciate someone just walking into their home. And then it became, about alcoholism, compulsive drinking, or he would go to Salvation Army and buy Hawaiian shirts or coffee grinders. He was just like doing things that were a little bit odd, and he wasn't able to keep a job. So you can imagine that was incredibly challenging for my family. He was really our primary breadwinner at that point. And my mom had to go back to work. I had a lot more family responsibilities. It's really hard, they say when you're swimming in water, like you can't tell that it's wet, And I think that's kind of how I think about my childhood. I don't think about it necessarily like, yes, it was very hard and there were things that were really hard, but I don't know if at the time I realized what was going on, how serious it was. We really relied a lot on people in our community for support. We had family friends that would take my sister to school, and, other people taught me how to drive, and we were responsible for kind of figuring out a lot of things by ourselves. I really credit this, even though it was a really horrific thing to happen to our family, with my strong sense of independence and my strong sense of community also. It's kind of a fucking thing to say, but again, being able to hold multiple identities, I think is important.
If I didn't know anything about you, do you think just by hanging out with you for 10, 15 minutes, do you think I could figure out that you're a middle child?
Maybe. I think a lot of people assume I'm the oldest.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think they're picking up on when they assume that?
That I'm the oldest? I think because I'm responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty clear-headed, and I tend to take charge in situations. But I think that my older sibling has always just like had a different path. And so I think that that's probably why I was the one who kind of took charge of situations.
Yeah.
I did a lot of managing around the house and helping with my sister and cooking and cleaning and just like organizing and sort of being everyone's therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a very particular kind of middle child experience. I think, you need to have the right type of older sibling to have that exact experience. How did your childhood feel given this setup, right? Given your dad's diagnosis, given you being a middle child, given having an older sister, I was finding her own path, a younger sister needed to be taken care of. Did you feel like stressed at a young age? Did you feel a deep sense of responsibility from a pretty young age?
Yeah, I definitely always felt responsible.
Yeah.
I think I remember so many adults telling me, like, you don't have to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I just, I just always felt like I had to be responsible for everything. Everything was always not necessarily my fault. I feel like that's the word that I want to say. But, if things didn't go well, I would be like, oh, I should have done this better. I should have done that better. And I think it's actually something that I worked really hard in my 20s to kind of be able to quiet that and say, yes, I'm responsible. Yes, there are things I'm responsible for. And also, like, we're responsible together as a community. It's not just on one person. And also some things I just don't have control over. And that's important.
Yeah.
An important lesson to learn. I still think of my childhood there were so many happy times. My family is incredibly loving and, creative and so smart. Like having dinner at my family home is so fun and chaotic, and people are talking about like history and politics and a movie that they saw and quoting things, and it's just like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
And I loved that about my childhood. And my husband, when he first came to dinner, was kind of like, I don't know how to insert myself with this conversation.
That was my wife of my family's first dinner.
Yeah.
it was just one quick thing off of that. Like, do you ever, when you hear, again, we're going back to like stereotypes, right? But the stereotype that exists in particular of Asian immigrants, right, is one of like, everybody's quiet at the dinner table. And if they talk about grades. And I look at my life story and I can't relate to that at all. My parents' biggest preoccupation as parents was to make sure that I wasn't a dork. And so they can't figure out that truly, my parents think I'm so boring. Truly, my parents think I'm boring. You have a podcast. And oh yeah, it's helping my stock with my mom. But they genuinely think I'm way too serious. They think I'm way too like focused on like academics. So their whole thing was trying to do the opposite thing. Try to get me to have a social life. Try to get me to like be like, and it's the same thing for my wife. My wife, you know, it was similar sort of circumstances as you. Grew up in a suburb of LA in the 90s. And, you know, my wife's a painter and a designer, and her brother is a professional cellist. And I don't think at any point my in-laws, her parents told her that she needed to be an engineer or doctor, whatever stereotype exists. But anyway.
That is really funny because, yeah, I feel the same. Like my parents, having both been in the film industry, already kind of odd. My father's father ended up being an animator, like very artsy. Yeah, I just don't think and then I don't know if I said this earlier, but both my parents, they didn't graduate college.
Cool.
And so I actually feel like my parents could have maybe asked me about my grades more. I don't know. I think, you know, they were really trying to say like what's important. Yeah. You know, our values are so important, you know, caring about people, being kind, like those are important things.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. And, you know, it is kind of funny that I ended up studying business and then getting my law degree and then becoming, you know, mayor of Berkeley. That wasn't really at all, I think, what my parents kind of imagined for me. I think they knew like, oh, you're going to be some kind of leader, but not necessarily what that would look like. Yeah.
Well, to me, it makes perfect sense that if you grow up with this deep sense of responsibility, right, and this focus, and if you feel like you need to make things all right, it makes perfect sense that you would go for like a business degree and you'd go, you know, like you'd study the law and then you'd want to sort of like be in public office. To me, that tracks perfectly. But I want to actually like hear about that part of the story. So tell me about the journey from Agoura Hills to not Berkeley City, UC Berkeley. Like what was that like for you?
Oh, yeah. So you can imagine that growing up in a household where things are a bit chaotic, you know, my mom was working, my dad wasn't well. You know, I had a lot of family responsibilities, like things like school kind of fell by the wayside. And I think by the time I was in 10th grade, you know, I was such an overachiever at the time, or an achiever, I should say, because I hate when people say over. That makes it sound like you're doing too much.
Yeah.
But I was a high achiever, and I just burnt out. And I was like, I just can't hold all of these things anymore. I just literally was holding the world on my shoulders. That's what it felt like, right? And so I ended up leaving high school in the middle of 10th grade. I took the CHESP, the California High School Proficiency Exam, and tested out. And I went to community college in Southern California, Moore Park Community College. And at that time, somewhere around that time, I don't know exactly when, my high school boyfriend had gotten into UC Berkeley. So I got a chance to go with him and his family to visit the campus and see what it was like. And I remember literally stepping foot on campus, and it just, this wave of emotion or feelings or something like hitting me and feeling like this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it was kind of insane because, quite frankly, like, I don't think I really understood, you know, the reputation of UC Berkeley, how hard it is to get in, you know, even really like the history. And I just kind of had this feeling like, okay, this is where I have to be.
Yeah.
So, you know, I left Moore Park Community College. I ended up, you know, going to Berkeley City College. I have lots to say about that, but I'll just, you know, skip ahead and say, you know, I transferred to UC Berkeley, and it was an incredibly emotional experience for me.
Yeah.
Because it was something I had worked so hard to do. It was so hard to leave my family. I really felt like I was abandoning them. You know, that just this feeling, like I said, this pressure of like always feeling responsible, and then to say like, I really need to focus on myself and my education, and this is what I want to do, and I'm going to make this decision and just go and do it. And I really didn't know. It was such a painful time because I didn't really know that many people up here. I have family up here, but I didn't grow up with them as much, and they've become such a huge support system for me. I really love my family up here and didn't really know that many people. We didn't have a bus system in LA, not really. There's like the transit system, like all this stuff that was like completely different that I felt like I had to learn from scratch without the kind of environment that you have as a freshman when you enter a four-year university. I think that they kind of hold you a little bit more. And as a community college student, there's a little bit more like you got to figure it out for yourself. So yeah, it was a challenging time for sure.
Yeah. Man, I can really relate to a lot of that. I think at one part I'll like sort of, I guess, zoom into there is the feeling of Berkeley, the university, right? Because I had the same feeling and coming from a very different world, but I remember stepping foot on campus and just being like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. I think because it's this mix of like, for not overachievers, achievers like you and I that are very focused.
There you go.
That kind of academic rigor and everything, that's all great. But I remember I read a quote, I think it was Dr. King. He said that Berkeley, the university, is the conscience of the American academic community. I'm sure I'm butchering it, but that's the core of what he said. And I was always this kid where like every question is a moral question. Every question is a question of conscience, right? In a way that is probably not good. And so I found that Berkeley, just like no other university, no other place I'd ever been to, sort of had that like mix of things, of like wanting to do well, but also wanting to do good, and taking both of those goals equally seriously. And that's making no mention of how beautiful it is, how incredible the people are there, all of that, right?
Yeah.
But let's kind of move forward in your story a little bit, sure. Right? And you go to Berkeley, you go to Haas, which is a business school. For people that don't know, you were on a very solid like career path where you could have gone on. And I don't mean to throw you a softball here. Like I'm going to try to ask this in a real way. Like you could have had a very successful commercial career, right?
Yeah, I could be making more money.
I had a lot of money, yeah. I know, like everybody in the city, I know how much the mayor makes. You could be making a lot more. Why? Tell me about that early decision to go into public office.
Oh, gosh, I think that it was an early decision to go into public service. Mm-hmm. That's how I would say it. Actually, I have a history of giving up my paid jobs for volunteer work.
Yeah.
So I actually feel like this is a step up for me in that like I have now get a chance to do work I would be volunteering my time on and I get paid for it. So to me, that's actually just a bonus. It's really funny, actually. My first paycheck with the city for this job, like I hadn't set up, deposits, how to automatic deposits, what you call this. And that is so fun. I think that speaks to the fact I'm not doing this for the money because literally, my husband's like, are you trying to get paid? Do you get paid for this job? Are you trying to get paid for this job? Because you should set this up. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes, I should set this up. But yeah, so you asked me, like, how did I end up in this? And, that really started in community college. And that's why I was saying I have so much more to say there about community college. When I was a student at Berkeley City College, there were really massive budget cuts to education.
Yeah.
And again, like me feeling like, right, I'm like responsible for things. We have to do something about this. Like, this is not okay. I started to organize my peers on rallies up to Sacramento, educating people about these budget cuts, how they were very severely impacting community college students in particular. And this is a population of, students who are low income, first generation, students of color. We have foster youths, vets, folks who are formerly incarcerated, all these people who need extra support. And they were just not getting it. And I remember just being so furious and frustrated about that and being like, somebody needs to do something.
Yeah.
And realizing, okay, that somebody is me, that somebody is all of us. We all need to be getting involved with these issues. And I kind of caught the bug, I really from this place of like, we need to do better for our communities. And I got involved with the League of Women Voters. It's a huge part of my story. So nonpartisan politics, meaning we don't support or oppose any parties or candidates. And I would educate my peers about issues. I would volunteer for candidate forums. I would register people to vote. I would help with mock elections at Berkeley High School or the student government elections at Berkeley City College. Just really like all of this, getting involved in all this stuff. And it was incredibly fulfilling to me. And in wanting to make my community better, I was like, this is my jam. Like, this is what I want to do with myself, right? And even though I went and I studied business, I just kept coming back to this, like, how do I serve my community? How do I make my community a better place? And that is something that has really driven me, even though I've done many different types of jobs and work in my life. This is the common theme is like, I want to make our communities a better place.
Yeah. I'm struck by how much in your story individually and kind of in the broader story of Berkeley, broader story of California, like, there's no way to read that story, or the positive parts of that story without just being struck by how much generosity and how much of a sense of service it took for you, for Berkeley, for the state to be so successful, right? Like I was thinking about as I was working, as I was researching this conversation, I was thinking about like, you should be the poster child for the education system that the state set up, right? Clark Kerr, we famously have a dorm named after, right? This idea of like, we will have a 3-tiered system and that every child, every son and daughter of California, if they want, can get a good education, right? I mean, does this actually, I'm showing my age now, but like, does it still exist, the thing that like a certain, like, what was it, like top 8 of every class could just get into a UC or something like that, right? That existed for a while. I think like I heard Ezra Klein say this one time on a podcast recently. He said, I believe the University of California system is the best thing we have ever built. And I think he was referring to America. Mm-hmm. And I think I kind of agree that I think like and again, you are a perfect glowing example of why, right? And it's not just the University of California, it's at a more broader level, this sort of 3-tiered system, right? Again, I just come back to this idea of like, I don't know how anybody could come and appreciate California and not be struck by like how much went into making, how many individual people's service went into making the system, right? But again, bringing this back to you, I think, so you have this like strong sense of public service that, in some ways seems like stems from your childhood, but has developed from your own experience of going to community college and doing this and like hearing the stories of people that are there with you. Tell me, let's switch to the other side of this for a second, which is, tell me about now the city of Berkeley, right? Like a place can be quoted hundreds of times on this podcast as saying is the best place on earth.
It is. I mean,
Just someone to the unacquainted, someone that has never been to or even heard about Berkeley, California. Maybe you and I can collaborate on this. Like, how do you describe the magic of Berkeley, California?
Oh my gosh. So I bike to work basically every day. And when I get a chance to bike through our city and it's like the weather is beautiful, the sun is shining, I see the kids playing at the park, I bike by the farmer's market, it's like I see housing being built. Like there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
And just kind of going through the city, you sort of get a chance to capture this magic. I would describe it like almost every day I'm going through our city and just like marveling at the wonders that we have in our city. I mean, obviously I'm Mayor, so I'm incredibly biased.
Yes.
But we have just such good food. There's so much to do. We have so much art and culture. The university is incredible. I mean, #1 public university in the world.
Yes.
There's so much to say about just that. And we have all these little shops and stores. I bought this necklace actually, like locally. You know, there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to be kind of blown away.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even take into account our history and the free speech movement and how we're the birthplace of the disability rights movement. Just all these different things that we've pushed forward as a city that I'm incredibly.
The first desegregated school district, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I think you nailed it. It's because I've had this experience of, I've been in and out of Berkeley, but mostly in Berkeley for the past 15 years, similar to you. And I had this experience where people, family members, friends will visit from out of town, carrying with them this like strong, I think, sort of preconceived notion of Berkeley as some like, I think they would describe it as like liberal hellscape, right? And they come in and like, again, this isn't me trying to like paint. It's hard to explain the degree to which people have this wrong, which is I'm not trying to paint something that's like kind of rough in a slightly better light. I'm literally saying it's the best place on earth. And people come in with this idea of it being, I don't know what they think it is. But it's like, I think to me, a lot of this comes down to just simply this, a lot of politics, a lot of public service, a lot of like just city planning, government. Comes down to just one question of like, what does it feel, right? And I think being in Berkeley, living in Berkeley, again, we have our problems, obviously. No one's more aware of them than you are, but being in Berkeley, living in Berkeley feels great. And just about everyone I know, including the people that came in thinking it was a liberal hellscape, just sort of have to like scrape their jaws off the floor when they come around. They're like, "What does it feel so good? It just smells good. It like if I have to hear, it just smells beautiful. It's like the most efficient way for me to buy bread is to go to my local bakery. The most efficient way for me to buy coffee or wine is to go to my local coffee roaster or local winery. This is just Berkeley. And
we're so spoiled.
Oh, we're so spoiled. It's like the rest of the podcast could just be this. I was talking about how much Berkeley's...
Totally. We could just gush about Berkeley the entire time.
There's a tiny sliver of North America that gets what is called, I looked this up recently, warm summer Mediterranean climate. LA has hot summer Mediterranean climate, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's Mediterranean most of the year, but summers are hot.
Mm-hmm.
Berkeley and this tiny sliver of these places, basically the only place in North America, definitely the only place in continental U.S. that gets it is most of the time how like Menorca feels or something. Just again, I don't know how to tell people this other than just like...
It's like it's scientific. You're basically saying...
Yeah, I'm trying to I'm trying to find math and like sciencey sounding terms to justify my deep love for this idiot. But okay, so you've got the best place on earth and you've got this kind of deep sense of public service. These come together at some point. I heard, a friend suggested you should run for mayor.
Actually, I will add a little nuance there because people always say women only run for office if someone asks them to run. And in my situation, this person actually said like an offhanded comment, like, I don't know anyone else who's running unless you are. Not like even saying asking me, but that was what planted the seed that kind of took me down this path. Yeah. So I'm proud of that because I think that women, like, you don't need somebody to ask you to run. Just go run. Yeah. Do it.
Okay, I have a couple of things about that. But one thing so we've had a few, I know you wouldn't like to be described this way, and I wouldn't describe you this way, but we've had a few politicians on, and I find that word, but and we've had a lot more that I've spoken to in sort of preparing for this. And I'm fascinated by how much a certain kind of personality, and you are, I think, a great example of this, like a very hardworking, conscientious person that is also very charismatic and charming, right? A certain type of person, like that is the compliment you get, isn't it? Like people being like, oh, you should run for office. Like, is that been your experience?
I think my favorite compliment is when people say, oh, you're like a normal person.
Yeah.
Because actually, I think that people think of politicians as being like super polished and like maybe a little bit more standoffish, like careful about how they speak about things. And I think, I don't know, other people have told me at least that I'm like a little bit more casual. Literally, someone walked into my office and they're like, oh, like, this is like less, more casual than I expected, like that's stately. And that was something that I feel like even on the campaign we talked about is like, she's just kind of a normal person. Like, she wants Berkeley to be a good place. She cares about people. Like, this is kind of what she's focused on.
You're kind of answering what was going to be my question there, which is, why do you think you won? Like, I understand why you ran. Why do you think you won? Warm Intro is brought to you by WeFunder. WeFunder created this thing called the Community Round that lets you raise money directly from your community. So instead of going to VCs and rich people, angel investors, you can go straight to your friends and your family and your customers. And, this is not a traditional ad read. I used WeFunder for my company 3 times. We ran 3 rounds on WeFunder. We raised over $1 million. And I found that it completely changed how everybody felt about our business. Our customers all of a sudden didn't feel like they were just customers. They felt like they were owners in the business. They shopped with us more. They told their friends about us. My team felt like what we were doing was important because our community had shown up to invest in us. I tell every founder I can find to go raise a WeFunder round. Especially for companies that care about community, there is nothing greater you can do than letting that community invest. Go to wefunder.com/join to check it out.
Yeah. I think the positivity I bring to this role is a little bit unusual. At least, again, this is what people have told me. The world is kind of crazy right now. And I think there are a lot of people who are really afraid and concerned and disenchanted with our democratic system, with our country. And I'm someone who really believes, like, yes, we have to be serious and we have to take on these problems. And also, we still need to have joy.
Yeah.
Joy is such a huge part. It's actually one of the values of our office and one of the values on the campaign is like, of course, we have to be serious about things, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun while we're doing this.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me. And it comes out in a lot of different ways where we're really focused on community building, where, I like to take a lot of time and talk to young people. I love visiting schools. It's one of my favorite things, and taking questions from students and trying to encourage them to get more civically engaged.
Yeah.
I think that I could talk about like so many different pieces of why I won. I also think policy-wise, I'm pro-housing. I'm really focused on having safe streets. That's, what some people have said. They think that that's why I've won. We had an amazing team. We had around 200 volunteers. We knocked on over 20,000 doors. I knocked on thousands myself. I was out there knocking almost every single day. So we really ran a strong grassroots campaign.
Yeah.
And, I think that the kind of fun that we brought in our campaign was sort of infectious.
Yeah.
I think people saw, like, we're out there, we're doing good work, we're good on these issues, and we're having a good time doing it. Who doesn't love a party, right?
Yeah. Okay, I think this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, which is what got me thinking about it was the Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance, right?
Yes.
I was thinking about it because Bad Bunny is not a person, unlike a lot of sort of public figures, right? That he doesn't talk a lot about the policies he wants to see, or that's just not his vibe. But what I found interesting about it was like a lot of my most political friends, I can often be in this camp. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that have the strongest views about how our society should feel, how our community should feel, are also the most fucking boring people in my life, right?
Oh, no.
No, they're just like, I think this is a thing that we all, especially as progressives, have to find a way to balance. Is like, yes, we need to be serious about our convictions, but you cannot become a person that nobody wants to be around at a party, right? Because we do, it is like, and I think what I found so powerful about the Bad Bunny performance was he just shows you how it feels to live in Bad Bunny's America, right? As opposed to endlessly sort of proselytizing and just talking about it, like, this is what it instead of writing another goddamn manifesto or another doctrine, like, let's be a really fun party that people actually want to be at, right? Yeah. Again, I just go back to, like, and this is how I feel about Berkeley, like, you can think whatever you want about our policies or how the politics of the place, but just come for a second and tell me it doesn't feel great to live here, right? And I think I really connect with what you're saying, that I think, and there's no better example of this right now than Mamdani, of course. His events, his campaign, his social media felt genuinely fun to be a part of, right?
Right.
And we can talk all we want about this like dreamy America and this dreamy Berkeley we want to live in. But if I don't feel it, then hearing you talk, like, how much is that really worth?
I appreciate you saying that. I think that that's really true. I worry that our politics, and I think people think C-SPAN, they're like, I'm going to go, like, who's going to say in our generation, I'm going to go and just watch C-SPAN today? Like, very few people, right? Yeah. And I think, like, how do we make our politics and civic engagement engaging and interesting? Because we have to kind of do that. Otherwise, we're not going to engage young people. Otherwise, we are going to lose folks who feel tired and overwhelmed and burnt out by what's happening in our politics.
Yeah, I think the really funny thing that makes me think of is, like, liberals, we have sort of found ourselves in a very awkward position in the last decade or so, right? Because you've had this like right-wing assault on institutions, right? So now the left wing or the liberals, we have to kind of be like, no, I actually love the DHS. Not DHS, but I actually love the CDC. And which is like a very uncomfortable position for liberals to be in, because we were the people we hated the system. And now you guys hate it so much harder in a weirder way. So now we have to be like, actually, the NIH is the best thing ever created. No, we hate big. Like, all of it is such an odd predicament to be in as American liberals. That's just be the defenders of the institutions. Like, no, we're supposed to be like railing against the system. You're making us do weird stuff. Like, yeah, it's like, it wasn't perfect, but yeah, it's weird to me. There's no confidence. Yeah, we're supposed to be punk rock. What are you making us do? Like, it's like a strange, feels very awkward.
That's so funny. Well, and actually, this is something I've been challenging our other elected leaders on right now, is like, okay, everyone is focused on, no, let's bring it back to the way it was. And I'm like, actually, let's bring it back further the way we want it to be, like, okay, we don't have to stop here at changing this system. Like, we don't want to just bring this back the way it was. Yeah. We actually need to go further. So what are you doing to not only think about challenging what's happening right now, but making it, aspirational and exciting?
Yeah.
That's actually, so that's where I would say it's to help with the awkwardness of it, be like, actually, we're going to go further even left.
Yes. Well, tell me about like one very specific way in which that conversation kind of like shows up for you, right? Which is knocking on 20,000 doors, which I know, like, I don't know how many, you said 10,000 individually? How many do you think you did?
I wish I had kept track of that. Honestly, that would have been a good thing. But it was like a lot. I mean, it did definitely thousands. Wow. I was so in shape by the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
Walking up all these stairs. We have a lot of Berkeley houses with stairs and hills. And yeah, it was.
I asked Connie Chen, who's running for Congress, of course, if she had any tip for people running for office. And she said, buy good shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think some asshole on Twitter was being mad, was making fun of her for saying that. But I thought it was it was a good tactical point.
It's like real.
It's physically exhausting to do this.
Yeah, I definitely burnt out a good pair of shoes, But
like, what did that sort of teach you about the community, maybe specifically the community we live in, but maybe at a broader level, like the work of politicking, right? Again, I know you don't like that word, but like the work of campaigning, the work of like building consensus, like, what is that experience like to knock on thousands of doors and thousands of people?
So backing up a little bit, just to say my background with the League of Women Voters taught me that way more people than you realize don't know what's happening in our politics. They don't know who the mayor is. They don't know what the policies are. They don't really read the local news. And when you go knock doors, you actually get a chance to see that. And that's kind of surprising, because in Berkeley, people always think of Berkeleyans as being like super political. They know everything that's going on. And it's true. Like, a lot of times folks do know what's going on, and they are political. They're very highly educated, formally educated. Our rate of graduation and graduate school education is higher than like almost anywhere in the country. It's very, very high. And it was shocking how many people didn't know what was going on, weren't really following the race, and, spending time actually to tell them what's going on and, why we think that they should vote for me and what are the issues and kind of doing some education at the door. Like that was a good reminder, because when you're on city council, you hear from the most active, ardent supporters or opposers of every single issue. And sometimes it can be easy for political leaders to forget that that's not everybody. That not everybody thinks that this one issue is the most important issue, or not everybody is opposed to this thing, because I think in particular, the people who come out are opposed to things because they're active. Yeah. And so having had so many thousands of conversations with people at the door in the community, I can say, like, I feel like I have a strong sense of where people are at and what they actually believe in and what they care about. Yeah. That makes me feel much more confident moving forward, that I have a strong sense of what people care about and what they need in their community.
Yeah. So you go through this experience, right? Your team knocks on 20,000 doors. You raise so many small individual contributions, right? And now you're the mayor. And you wake up.
It was just like that.
Yeah, it's just 20 minutes. But you're the mayor all of a sudden. One day you wake up. And I guess my first question is just, what does your, a couple of salient points that, like, I haven't seen you mention it anywhere, but as far as I can tell, you're the youngest mayor of a city this size, or second youngest? Is that?
Yeah, so Mayor Arreguín, or before me, now Senator Arreguín, it was the youngest. I can't remember how old he was, but we were pretty close, I think, in age.
Oh, sorry, I meant like currently serving, from what I can tell, from a city this size.
Oh, yeah.
And you're the youngest in America. And it's also, of course, as we mentioned now 700 times on the podcast, the most livable city in America, right? I think ranked as such. But what I want to know is, like, to be the youngest mayor of the most livable city in America, what does your day feel like? Is it, just walk me through even the logistics of a day in the life of the mayor of Berkeley.
Yeah. Do you mean like when I get to work, or like from the beginning?
Like how do you get to work? Like, is your time
video day to life?
Exactly. What is your day in the life?
Yeah. I wake up, I read what feels like hundreds, but it's not, of messages and emails and news articles that have popped up on my screen.
Yeah.
Skincare is very important. You gotta put on sunscreen, right? That's important. Feed my dogs, take care of stuff, try to eat a little something, run out the door. My staff can attest to this, that it's very hard to get me into the office because people are like calling me in the morning, like there's all this stuff already happening. And anyway, try to bike over to work as fast as I can. It's really only like a 7 or 8 minute bike ride, which is amazing. What kind of commute, that's an amazing commute.
Yeah.
And then on Mondays, we have our staff meetings. I have my standing meetings. I feel like I have a lot of meetings, especially earlier in the week. Tuesdays are council meetings, but I think people forget. So not only do we have council meetings, but we also have closed session and special meetings and committee meetings. Mm-hmm. So I spend a lot of my time in meetings, actually. And then towards the end of the week, we try to be more out in the community. Yeah. And that's the stuff and at evenings, weekends, later in the week. That's just really, like, I love that. I love being out in the community.
Yeah.
Just one-on-one office hours, community events, ribbon cuttings, visiting schools. All of that stuff is just like, to me, like, that is what keeps me going and excited in this job, is just like hearing from the community, being out in the community.
Yeah. The thing that for every episode, for every guest, I try to kind of arrive at, like, what is the thing I really want to talk to them about? What is it, the through line that I see in their life, right? And I have been thinking a lot about, and kind of preparing for this, about this sort of idea of service, or maybe at a broader level, feeling your responsibility, mm-hmm. right, towards people other than yourself. And I see that all the way through the story of your life. And also, like, in the story of America, I find that maybe for our generation in particular, it feels like it's a dying or dormant quality. There was a concept of public service that I find is, if not going extinct, again, like going dormant for a little bit, that it's not really, I don't remember the last time I met somebody sort of in our generation that like, and again, I'm not talking about being an activist, which is an important thing and people should do it. I'm talking very specifically about the work and the philosophy of public service, right? It's really kind of on its way out, right? And I think that there's nowhere that you see it more than with the mayors of smaller cities, right? That I find that that's the one place where it still kind of lives on. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. That like, why do you think? Well, firstly, do you think that that's happening? And why do you think that's happening? Why do you think there aren't more people who think about public service the way you do?
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you asking me that question. I actually have a lot of thoughts about this because, again, League of Women Voters is such a big part of my political upbringing. And one of the things that we talked a lot about is how, people were part of their like local, their Rotary Club, and they had Sewing Circle, and they had all these different things. And part of that was actually because women weren't working. And so that really impacted the League of Women Voters because back in the day, they would have more active members because women weren't working. And now, because of course, just like what's happening with our economy, so many places women are working. And so they don't have time to volunteer and to run all these different clubs and organizations. Because honestly, I think it was the power of women that were powering all these different civic organizations. And then now that we have to work, we have to be responsible for raising kids, doing housework and a job. And so it's created this situation where these civic organizations, I think, aren't as active. I do agree with you in that. And I think that post-pandemic, I think that there are actually people who are really craving this, in-person connection. And I'm starting to see more opportunities for community building, for civic engagement, people trying to find ways to connect.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually very hopeful in that we're heading more in this direction. I didn't get a chance to really look into it, but I saw somewhere recently, like there was like a club of, I think UC Berkeley students that were trying to get each other off their phones or something. And it was like, I was like, great. And I think we kind of need that. I think we crave that as people, as just like human beings. So I am hopeful that we can head in that direction. And believe me, when I'm out in the community, I am talking about this all the time.
Yeah.
Like people, okay, you're mad about this, you're frustrated, go do something about it.
Yeah.
Make a club, get folks together, come to our meetings. I try and make our meetings as efficient as possible because I want people to feel like it's a good use of their time to come, that their voice will be heard, that we'll hear them, and that they can go about their business if they want to, or they could stay and listen. And we love that.
Yeah.
We even have like a Bring Your Kid to Council Day. So trying to do extra, work of explaining what's happening so that those kids can know what's going on. And during breaks, I'll actually go out and talk to them about what's happening in the process.
Yeah, I think you diagnosed the problem very well there. I agree. It seems like it's a mix of two things, maybe, right? The first one that you just said, it's that kind of classic Neil Postman, right? Like bowling alone idea of like, well, we used to go to the theaters and now we just watch a movie at home and we're just not around the public anymore. And so it's harder to feel a sense of service towards something you're not around very much. And I do think that there's this other part of this that, and again, I'm going to bring this back to mayors in particular. I think there's this feeling, people have sort of checked out of government in a way that I think is underreported, and you kind of just touched on it back there, right? If like when you would go in, you were surprised by how many people had no idea what was going on, who the mayor even was. And I think like that is again, because the way that these echo chambers form, right, where most journalists are on Twitter, or formerly Twitter, and they're surrounded by other politics nerds, right, and other journalism nerds. Mm-hmm. So they think people are so plugged in, where in reality, I would say the default posture of the average American is one of like, yeah, government can't do anything for me. Anything that will happen that's good in my life, I need to go and fight for myself, which is, it's not a terrible value to have, but it's like, government does, for it to work, it does require something from you, right? And I think people are so like, people feel to basically the only relationship they feel with government is one of like inconvenience and being in the way, right? And it's very hard to feel a sense of civic duty when that's the core relationship you have with government. And I think that is, if people think about it as like it's been true forever, but it's really like a post, I would say 1980s, like this deep sense that government can't do anything well, and all they do is make my life harder, and I don't want anything to do with it, right? Like, it's kind of like a newer, and we were both born into that political era, right? But now, all of that said, I do find something I find really interesting is the ways in which that's breaking. I think, again, no better example of that than Mamdani, where this idea of like, no, if we do this thing well, first, we make it a fun party that people want to be at. Secondly, we solve problems. I love the Mamdani everyday post, the number of potholes they filled in, right? It's so small and tactile. It's probably like number 95 on his list of things to do. But I like that his social media team does it because it makes people, that's what people feel. You feel the pothole outside your apartment, right? And I think that there is this return, and I think the mayors are, and you remember during COVID, everybody kept talking about how it was the era of the governor was returning. Well, it turns out Cuomo's a creep and nobody wants anything to do with him. Like, people were talking about how governors were going to be the next big thing. I think what we are finding actually are the mayors are sort of entry point back into like feeling connected to government. Do you agree with that? Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Because our local government is actually what people have the most interaction with. They can't go out to an event and talk to the governor or the president usually. They may not even know what a county supervisor is.
Yeah.
And mayors are usually out, and hopefully they're out in the community. You have the opportunity to talk to your mayor more directly or your city council member. And I think that access makes it much more tangible.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, the potholes, our fire, our police departments, just generally our infrastructure. What does the city feel like? What housing is allowed to be built and where.
Yeah.
I think that those are things that people can really see more directly. And we've actually done work too to try to help folks understand, like, what is it that the city's doing well? Because something else that I realize is, Mamdani's got a whole team of people who are doing his social media.
Yeah.
And, we're a pretty smallish, medium-sized city. We don't have the ability to do that. And that also means on the city side, there's a lot of work that our city staff do every single day that unfortunately people don't really know about. They might notice like, oh, this road feels smoother, or, this park looks nicer, but they're not necessarily making that connection of like a city worker went out and did that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other thing I think I love about being mayor is just going around the city and seeing our city workers doing things, because I get to read all the reports. I get to hear about all of the great work that they're doing. And so we're trying to also help the community see that so that they can really feel like politics, does matter. My government is doing something for me. There are benefits here and I can actually see them.
Yeah.
Because I think we can all have great PR.
Virality or social media info.
That would be so cool. I would love that. You're way overqualified.
That's right. But I do think like in what you just said is a bit of a prescription, which I agree with. That like if you feel NPR, the NPR podcast I listen to, it they start by saying, "Here's the news you need to start your day." And I think about that a lot. I'm like, you don't need any news to start your day. I mean, if it helps you, sure, go ahead. But like, it's, I think again, back to the same problem where because we feel so like disconnected locally, we feel the need to be super plugged in nationally or globally, right? But like, a ship rams into a bridge, right? Far, far away from me, right? And that will keep me up, right? Thinking about the lives of the people that are affected. in Baltimore, right? A city I don't think ever been to, right? And then multiply that by millions. And that's the experience of being alive in today's sort of media ecosystem, right? Is like constantly worrying about problems that are so far away. Not that they don't matter, but that they're so far away, right? And I find, back to the prescription, that if you want to feel better about America, you want to feel better about government, go meet your mayor. Stop like sniping at like the president or the secretary of the state. I mean, do that also if it makes you feel good. But more than likely, like, if it's not making you feel good, tune it out for a second and get involved. Hey, like, get involved locally in your Rotary Club. Join city government. Like, go talk to your mayor, attend a city hall. Like, I do feel like that more of that will probably lead to a happier America.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I hear people say that to me. They say all the time, I hear folks say, okay, what's happening on the national level, the global level is a disaster, but reading my local news or hearing about what you're doing or seeing a newsletter, like, makes me feel better. Makes me feel like, okay, there are good things happening, change is possible. And I think that's positive. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to actually now talk about what that feels like on the other side, right? You being on the receiving side of that, to have this day, very busy with a lot of stuff. When you get home and your three dogs, your three dogs come running up to you and you sit down on the couch, like, you feel like do you still feel that weight of the world that you felt as a kid? Like, do you still feel this kind of like deep sense of response? Do you just immediately fall asleep, I guess, is in my version, like, as soon as you get home? How does that feel to like close out your day?
I'm so social. This is going to sound insane, but I also have a very active social life. I keep in touch with my friends. Like, my husband and I have date nights on Fridays. Like, I try to make time to like hang out with my daughter. We've been playing Scrabble a lot recently. I don't know, like the day doesn't end until like my head touches the pillow. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something going on, like, or we're going to take the dogs for a walk, or I don't know. I'm very good at compartmentalizing. I think it's partially a survival skill. And also, I used to work in the district attorney's office and the human trafficking unit.
Oh, God.
And you can imagine those cases are the most horrific cases. And I really had to learn how to compartmentalize and come home and just be like, okay, that's at work. This is here. This is at home. And I do the same thing. Have you seen Severance?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you know what I'm going to tell you? That's literally how I feel. It's like, on my bike to work, I like turn on my, I go into my INE, and I switch my brain, and then I like bike home and I switch to my Audi, and I'm like a much happier person for it. Very rarely do I like bring home work in a way that I think other people do sometimes. So they're like running through it in their mind and they're worried about this and that, the other thing, like, and like, that's just actually not healthy, in my opinion. I think that's a strong feeling. Sorry if you're someone who does that. But for me, I'm like, I need to be able to come home and just relax and decompress and hang out with my people and my dogs.
Zooming out, I will say that you being that extroverted might sound crazy to some people. It sounds perfectly normal to me. I am truly like ungodly amounts of extroverted. And so there's no better way to decompress than going out and hanging out with 20 people for me. So I'm with you there. I think turning back to the work for a second, for my sort of like, I have a couple of questions to close this out.
Sure.
One is, you zoom out and you think about like when your time as mayor is done, years, decades in the rearview mirror, right? What do you hope that the Mayor Ishii model of governance, what do you think the Berkeley model of development, if people are referencing that in, textbooks 40, 50 years from now, what do you hope they'll be talking about?
Yeah, I actually really just hope that they say that I made Berkeley more functional.
Mm-hmm.
That we were able to run a competent, organized government where we got things done and we made the community a better place. And that might sound very simplistic, but I think I said earlier, like, I'm doing this because I care about our community and I care about people. And it's not like I have this particular policy that I'm hoping is going to pass and then this is going to be what I hang my hat on. Like, I want people to say, like, those were good times. I felt safe. I was able to find housing. I was able to, go to school, move on with my career and just like enjoy my life. Like, to me, actually, the best government is government where you can't tell that we're here. Like, your life just is great and you just go about your business and do what you want to do and be the person you want to be. Like, actually, that is something that I think people forget. Maybe because sometimes people, they want to be known.
Yeah.
And for me, I want people to feel like we did a good job. And at the end of the day, like, if our community is safer, happier, well cared for, those are really like my priorities.
For the last question, I want to talk about this at a more personal level, which is zoom out, when they're teaching everything you did in textbooks. You and I are both in our 80s, right? Living hopefully in Berkeley that feels very similar to as it does now. And, you hear a knock on the door, right? And it's the Adena Ishii of whatever, the equivalent of 2076 or something, right? Like running for office to be the mayor. Yeah, what are you going to tell her?
Oh my gosh.
What are you telling, what are you telling your successor 50 years out?
I love that question. That makes me so happy to think about there being like another young woman, knocking on my door. That's what I want. I mean, that's the goal too, right? Yeah, I mean, I like to, ask good questions. I feel like I'd be like, oh, what are you doing? How's the campaign going? What are your top issues? I'd probably get into it like that. But also, there have been many young people who have been like, oh, how do I get involved in politics? What should I do? And even if I am not perfectly aligned with them policy-wise, I always offer advice and guidance if they want it. And so I would do the same thing. If there's something that you need, how can I support you? And especially if I supported their politics, yeah, absolutely. I try to get behind them. I really worry about the next generation feeling disengaged and disenchanted. My daughter calls them doomers. Mm-hmm. And, I want them to feel like there's hope, that there is an America worth fighting for, an America that they want to continue to be involved in and lead, that they can see that bright light. And, hopefully it's not just that person knocking on my door. Hopefully I'm already engaged with them. I'm already being supportive and helping them on their way.
That's a beautiful place to end. Mayor Ishii, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Warm Intro is produced by Jiwon Moon and Alex Seiko. Hosted by me, Chai Mishra. Presented to you by WeFunder.